Oh, I need to get this particular video off my chest before we head into 2024. We've all seen that banner with the slogan, we don't demand a team that wins, we demand a club that tries. We don't demand a team that wins, we demand a club that tries. I know the slogan means well, but the slogan itself is really quite unhelpful. It's meaningless. In fact, it gets on my nerves because in fact, neither statement is true. But we have a broad section of the Newcastle United fan base who actually believe our own bullshit. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why that particular slogan is meaningless, what it means today, and why Newcastle fans, or a broad section of them, are currently polishing our sword to fall on, and why we could be doomed to repeat history if we continue throwing our negativity at the club. It's coming up. Welcome back, it's Eddie here from Tyneside Life, and I hope you all managed to have a fantastic Christmas outside of the Newcastle United results, that is. So you'll have noticed that I'm doing far less videos these days. I did announce a couple of weeks ago that that's a direction I will be taking. I'll be moving away from the day-to-day Newcastle United stuff, the fan reaction stuff. It was just a hamster wheel going nowhere that I thought I needed to get off, and to cover Newcastle United in broader terms, but also to do more cultural stuff about Newcastle and the Tyneside area. So you'll have noticed that I've been doing some videos about the possible idea of a stadium relocation or expansion, and I've also got some cracking videos lined up in the new year outside of Newcastle United that I think you'll find really interesting. If all that appeals to you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, so every time I release a new video you'll get a notification. Right, I've had to change location because I was on the top tier of the car park but just started to chuck it down the rain, so I've come downstairs here. Now also in 2024 I have a mission for next year to help tell the true story of Newcastle United's formation year, which was 1881, not 1892. Now that's come from Paul Juanu, you might have heard of him. He's Newcastle United's official club historian. He has in his own way been trying to tell us the true story of our formation through his books and his literature, but unfortunately Paul has a really close working relationship with the club, so he has to be very careful on how he communicates things, what he says. He has to be very diplomatic. He doesn't want to compromise his own integrity with the club, because the club in fact have got themselves into a bit of a pickle over this formation year by claiming the 1892 story. The true story, in a nutshell: early in 1892, Newcastle West End folded, collapsed financially and ceased to exist. Newcastle East End, who were playing in Byker at the time, seized on this opportunity and moved to St James's Park, where Newcastle West End had been playing. Now St James's Park then was just a field with a shed or two and a couple of barriers, and they continued to play at St James's Park throughout the remainder of that year. They did seize on one or two of the club's assets from the West End in terms of one or two players and one or two of the directors, but Newcastle East End played here at St James's Park. There was no amalgamation, none. The problem was, during that time, not all of the fans in Newcastle wanted to support a club called Newcastle East End. So in December 1892, Newcastle East End had a meeting and decided to change their name from Newcastle East End to Newcastle United. A significant milestone in our history, but it wasn't the formation year of our club. That goes back to 1881 under our original name as Stanley FC. Every other club has its foundation year that it celebrates at the very beginning, even when it was called a different name and played at a different ground, except Newcastle United. And I explain the detail of all that in a video I released quite a few weeks ago. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to learn a bit more about the detail of the history of our club. But my mission is to spread that message about our true formation year. Let's get our history back. Be proud of our history, seize it back and celebrate it. If we've got anybody from War Flags out there who's watching that, you can help as well. Get the banners out there of 1881 so we can move away from this false story of 1892. So I just thought I'd let you know that's my mission, or one of them, for next year. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. And first of all, this has been, for me, the best year of supporting Newcastle United ever since I started going to the match in 1976. It's been absolutely unbelievable. Since that takeover under the PIF and Amanda Staveley and Jamie Rubin, when they took over from Mike Ashley, it was like we'd been snapped out of an evil spell. There was just a breath of fresh air just whipped its way throughout the club. It was just an amazing feeling, and we've just had an amazing couple of years since then. So in our second year this season, I mean, some of the football that we've served up has been absolutely world class. I mean, we've got to a Carabao Cup final. I know we lost and it was bitterly disappointed, but we've been to a cup final. We finished fourth. We qualified for the Champions League. With the type of football that we've been playing, we had a brilliant journey. Almost, I think with 20 minutes ago, we were going to be finishing second in the group stage and going through the last 16, but for a bit of bad luck. The match against PSG when we won 4-1 has to be, if not the best, one of the best matches I've ever been to in terms of Newcastle United. It was brilliant. And but also as well the fan engagement that there has been from the owners, getting the fans involved, telling us what's going to happen. The money the owners have ploughed into the club in terms of the infrastructure, the money we've spent on new players, exciting players, building this new squad from the ground up, which is going to take some time, about 250 million or so. An exciting new partnership deal with Adidas, which is putting more money into the pot to help grow the club to spend in the next few transfer windows. And also as well, in relation to the latest fan engagement meeting that there was, the plans to either refurbish and extend St James's Park, or to rebuild it, or to have another stadium somewhere else in the city centre. This promise to give us some world-class stadium facilities. Take all that into this year alone, it has been absolutely unbelievable, and it has to be one of the best years in Newcastle United's history. Unfortunately, the last 4 weeks or so, the last month, we've been dumped out of the Champions League, we've been knocked out of the Carabao Cup, we've lost 6 out of our last 7 games, 2 or 3 of those games against teams which are going to be battling relegation. 1 or 2 of our players have lost form. We look like a team that has just completely ran out of steam. Now there's going to be several reasons behind that. There's going to be the culmination of all the extra games we've been playing, the amount of injuries we've been carrying, which has been significant. And of course we've got like the likes of Trippier, who's clearly been distracted through some sort of personal issues going on in his life. But oh my God, it is the end of the world because of the results that we've had recently. Eddie Howe needs to be sacked. He was never good enough from the start. Let's get Jose Mourinho in, a gun for hire. We need to get rid of Martin Dubravka. Oh, it's a coincidence he's conceded 12 goals in this period. The words, the hyperbole that's coming out from individuals across social media, like disgusting, disgraceful, pathetic, embarrassing. All this bile and poison is gathering momentum. We're losing a complete sense of perspective, and when you direct that at the club, with a club who are trying their absolute best to give us the type of football that we're now becoming used to, it can only rub off. It can only create an atmosphere that's just poisonous. And then of course we've got an incredibly difficult January going into, with away matches at Liverpool and Aston Villa. We've got Man City at home in a 3rd round FA Cup tie away to the Mackems. We could find ourselves at the end of January sitting mid-table and knocked out of the FA Cup. So things could get a hell of a lot worse before they start getting better. Now of course it's completely understandable to feel disappointment and frustration when you lose a game or go through a bad run like we are at the minute. That's completely natural when you're passionate about the club that you support. But from, I don't know if it's a majority of Newcastle fans, certainly at least a significant minority of Newcastle fans, it's just turned into something ugly, this negativity that's been spread around. In fact, it makes me a little bit embarrassed to be a Newcastle fans when you see and you read some of the stuff that they're coming out with. So going back to that slogan I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there is certainly a large section of Newcastle fans who do demand that they win, and if we don't, then you're going to know about it. But also the other flip side about, we just want to demand a club that tries. Who are you trying to kid? Do you know how low that bar is? If that was true, if we were just happy that we have a club that tries, there is nothing to complain about. Everything is great. We shouldn't feel any disappointment or frustration. So you can see that But just the whole statement for me is absolute nonsense. Our expectations have risen because of the type of football we've been playing, but you should also remember as well that what the senior management team said at the recent fan engagement event at St James's Park very recently. Our CEO Darren Neils has said, and Dan Ashworth said, that the aim of Newcastle United is to regularly compete in the top 6. Not to win the Premier League, although that's what they're trying to do. The aim is to regularly compete in the top 6. They've deliberately lowered the bar a bit to lower fan expectations so we don't get this kind of vitriol against the club. So we need to pack it in. We need to get a grip. We need to gain that sense of perspective. We need to get behind the club, believe in the process. This is a long-term building process. Now, how could we be doomed to repeat history going back to the early 2000s when we were being managed by the late Sir Bobby Robson, who was with us for 4 or 5 seasons? We had that unbelievably great season 2002 and 3 when we played in the Champions League. Unfortunately, we didn't progress from the last 16. His following season, his last full season, we had a really disappointing end of the season, and we only finished 5th and played in the Europa League, and we were dumped out in the 3rd round to Partizan, I think it was. Now, the following season, 2004-2005, we had a really poor start, but momentum was gathering from the Newcastle United fans, not me personally. Newcastle United fans wanted Bobby Robson sacked. Do you remember that? We wanted him sacked. And of course, after that poor start in 2004, at the end of August, he was sacked. And that was the beginning of the end of Newcastle as a dominant force in Premier League football. Of course, now we forget about us wanting to have him sacked. We see him as a great manager, a great gentleman, a stalwart of the club that he loved. We've got a statue of him down at the corner of the stadium there. But if we're not careful, if we continue on the path that we're currently on, demanding that Eddie Howe isn't good enough and needs to be removed, that's what they'll do. We're going to create all this turmoil. We'll just bring in a gun for hire, and it's just not going to work. Eddie Howe is absolutely committed to making Newcastle United a success. No, he doesn't have the experience or the credibility at the highest level, but he is currently on that steep learning curve, and he will learn. He is going to make mistakes. He has made mistakes. He made a mistake against Forest on Saturday by playing Dan Burn at left back against one of the fastest wingers in the country, but he's going to learn from that. He's the right man for the job. He's the right man to take us forward. As far as I'm concerned, he's going nowhere. So absorb the bumps when they come in the season, because they're going to continue. We're probably going to have a really disappointing season compared to last season. We might finish 7th, 8th, 6th if we're lucky. We're perfectly capable of finishing higher, but expect us to finish lower than what we did last season, but hope for the best is my advice. Anyway, I'm glad I've got that off my chest. I'm glad I've got that rant out of the way. Let's go into 2024 full of positivity, both for the club. Let's get behind the team. Sing your hearts out for the lads every single match, even when we're not winning. Get behind the club, and in your personal life as well. Go into 2024 with some positivity. Take responsibility for your own personal decisions that might be making your life a bit more difficult. Take responsibility, make positive decisions, and try and be the best version of yourself, and be kind to everybody else. Happy New Year.